Hi, guys.
Hello and
Mm,
welcome.
Welcome to another episode of Hot Mess Moments.
Oh, so
Um,
hot. I actually really am very hot right now,
so for
temperature
the
wise. I mean, I'm always hot, but I am hot tonight. So,
yeah, it's pretty hot up where you're at right now, isn't it?
no, it's not. It's just my house.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, I don't know, like maybe 60 degrees today, but my family, I'm at my parents' house, which is why I have a different scenery, why I forgot my whole life, like a nice microphone, headphones, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
just putting that out there, just in the, the whole realm of hot mess moments, if things come across as a little hot mess on my behalf, that is why. But because I'm here with my family, they all decided, you know what, it's a little cold. Let's turn on the stove. And I'm like, no. Because they had like the fireplace going for a while, and I was like, but
Yeah,
they're
so
all
now
in
you're
bed now, so
so now like Beth's like a hot, sweaty mess, but it's like perfect
it's not
because
even.
it's perfect though because there were a lot of hot moments and some not hot moments that happened in these two episodes today that
Yes.
we are going to dive into because okay, I need to like correct myself real quick before we go
Okay.
any further. I last week said that this was a good episode of Lost. I I was thinking of another episode that happens in like
Gotcha.
season 2 or season 3 or something like that.
Gotcha.
So after like the beginning, like right as the episode started, I was just like, "Oh no, girl, I have made a mistake." I was like,
You're like, this isn't it. It's
yeah,
not it.
I hyped up this episode and I was just like, "Oh no, I hyped it up."
Meanwhile, I was hyping up this episode of The Nanny because it literally is one of my favorite
Yeah.
first season episodes. I would probably put it in my top 10 episodes of the series just because of the nostalgia I have for it more so than anything else. But, and I was like, oh, what if I hyped it up so much and like Dylan didn't like it? But I think you did. So we're
I
going to have to get into that. Oh.
I was definitely losing my shit like crazy during this episode. Like
Oh,
it
I thought you meant
was
like in a bad way. I was like,
yeah.
why spill? But no, okay.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Also, I do apologize. I am hearing a little bit of feedback, so
Okay.
I'm gonna keep my mouth low, and I'm not gonna eat my microphone like I normally do.
Well, I can
And
also turn you down on my side because
okay,
I'm sure I'll be able to hear you.
okay,
So,
perfect. I just want to make sure that our beautiful, lovely, sexy listeners right now are just like their poor
mm.
little delicate eardrums aren't bombarded by my voice twice because they already hate my voice one time.
Listen, if anybody follows either one of us, they know, first of all, delicate is not a word that describes either one of us.
It's true. I'm like 6'2", gangly, just a mess. I honestly am like a walking hazard.
And I'm uh, a sexy elephant in that I like stomp around like here I am. I'm the elephant in the room. You can't miss.
Only by attention wise, you are not an elephant. Do not describe yourself that way.
They are the cutest creatures on earth. I will describe myself as such. And
Okay, I will give you that. Elephants actually are like really stinking cute.
for those
Okay.
that don't know, elephants are my favorite animal of all time.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, they're
Oh
my
my God.
favorite animal. I was given a little baby pink elephant, stuffed little pink elephant when I was born, like the day I was born. My dad was so excited that he went down to the gift shop and bought a little elephant, and I still sleep with it.
Oh my God, that's desperate.
Isn't it?
That's cute.
It's really it really shows you where my mental capacity is as a 32-year-old.
I mean, to be fair, while you were sleeping with a really cute pink stuffed animal that has like sentimental value,
You
I
were
was
swimming
sleep.
around in your daddy's nutsack because you weren't born yet.
Oh my God, that's not where I was
Oh,
going with
okay. I'm sorry about that.
it.
I
I
just
was gonna
figured because
say,
you're younger.
yeah, no, I'm gonna say like while you did that in your childhood, I in my childhood was rocking a stuffed blue Power Ranger that I used to call my boyfriend and I used to make out with while I was in bed. And
I
it
have a
used to
question. Was there ever any guessing for you that you would be a homosexual?
Um, yes, I did not understand what my feelings were when I was young. And
Yeah.
so my mom never saw me like kiss my blue Power Ranger figure. And so she had no
You
idea. I mean,
didn't bring her into that world as a,
I
a 3 or
was like,
4 year old.
Mom, look, like all over my no, but my mom like definitely had a big idea, especially when I see home videos of me. I'm like, ooh, girl, she's gay. She's so gay. In fact, if you really want to see it, I'm gonna plug my YouTube channel. If you look up Ape It Homo, um, if you look on my YouTube channel, it's called Ape It Dylan now, but if you Google Ape It Homo, home videos of a 90s gay kid, I have uploaded some of my home videos to YouTube of me when I was a young kid, and you'll see just how gay I really
I
was.
have thought about doing something like that because I have home videos that are just freaking golden, like just to show like how dramatic I literally have always been. Um, I have a video of my 5th birthday party where like it's like one of those like kiddie pools
Oh my
and all
god.
the boys are splashing around and I'm going, stop it! Stop! Stop! Like that. And my dad's going, it's a pool, Beth. You're gonna get wet. Like he's just trolling me while he's videotaping me. And then I leave them and I go to like a really tiny little kiddie pool, like the plastic ones, and I'm just standing there and I'm going
Oh my god, I
and
would
looking over
hate
at
you as
the
a
pool. Just,
kid.
mm. So so that's what I've always been like.
I mean, I would hate you as a kid. I would hate you.
And I just have to put this out there. My best friend when
Yeah.
I was like 3, 4, 5, 6. His name is Brad. He had the '90s bowl cut, and he was a natural blonde and everything like that. So my
My
dad always
god.
called him Surfer Dude. And he and I were best friends. We were neighbors. We were in each other's pre-K and all that kind of stuff. And then when I moved away, obviously we didn't keep in touch because I was 6. Um, but we reconnected on Facebook when I was in college, and then we found out we were both studying abroad in London at the same time, and we met up there. And he's gay. So, like, literally, as a little girl, I literally just befriended all the gay guys.
I could have told you right at blonde bowl
Bull.
cut that he was going to be gay.
Can I also, if you ever wanted to know if Beth was going to be a queer herself, you can look. I also had a bowl cut when I was like 3.
Oh my
My
god.
parents were like, my mom was like, well, you never wanted anything done with your hair. And it was always just like a mess and mangled. So we had to cut it. I was like, well, that should have been our first sign. Mhm. Mhm.
Well,
Whatever.
okay. So speaking of just top tier gay comedy, it's not there was nothing gay about this episode, but something about it just screamed queer to me
You know
about
what it is,
this episode.
honestly, and I mean this sincerely. I think that there's something that's really fun when you take roles that aren't meant for you and like you
Yeah.
try them out and that kind of thing. And I think that that's a similar journey to a lot of people who are trying to discover like who they are either gender or sexuality or both on their journey. So there is something inherently fun about um, you know, mistaken identity and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's the same exact thing as a queer journey. I'm just saying there are elements there that I think can speak to a lot of queer people. But we are,
Yeah.
of course, talking about episode 6 of The Nanny of the season 1, where I think the title, can you correct me if I'm wrong, is The Butler, the Husband, the Wife, and Her Mother.
Yes, you did it. Oh my
Boom,
god.
from memory.
So this episode, I just have to get it off my chest, is my favorite episode of The Nanny that we have seen thus far. Like,
Yeah.
I love the pilot. The pilot up until this point was my favorite episode. This
Yeah.
episode, like, threw it down onto the ground, stumbled all over on it, shoved its face into mud, and then used its face as a propellant to leap forward. That's how much more I enjoyed this episode over the pilot. I don't think there was a single moment in this episode that was bad. Like,
And here's the best
oh,
part, okay? I think this is one of the few episodes that the more you watch it, the more little moments kind of go, oh, that was stupid, or that wasn't necessary, that's not funny, and that kind of thing. So I watched it, and of course I enjoy it because I really love this episode. But I watched it and I was like, the Butlers Association, really? They've got,
yeah.
and they're like, we've been duped. And like, and I'm like, okay, really? Like, I just, like those kind of moments. But like, that's not what you're going to focus on the first time you're watching it. So,
Yeah.
I would love for you to kind of go through what this is. This is really more of a plot driven episode than anything else that we've seen. Obviously, there's a lot of character. There's not a lot of character development. There is, but it's more like playing around with the characters, which for the sixth episode of their first season, that's kind of an ambitious task to play a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
So I'm really interested on your take of how the plot happens in the episode and your impressions.
Yeah. First I want to rate this. I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10 for sure.
Yeah.
I think there was some good character development moments, specifically for characters that we haven't seen a lot of character development for yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the episode starts off with Nanny and Niles, or Fran and Niles, in the kitchen looking for a mouse. Which I'm like, good luck finding it in this massive house. Like, come
In New
on.
York City, if there's, well, first of all, if you have one mouse, you have mice, bitch.
Yeah,
It is not just one mouse.
they are everywhere. They've already started a feast. There's probably like a sacrificial ritual happening within the actual walls. The mice have
Wait, do you know that?
unionized.
That's a thing with mice. They eat they're
Oh,
cannibals.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Okay. I didn't
oh,
know if you were
girl.
doing that as a joke or if like you were like, let me just pull out my little mice knowledge. And I was like, girl, come through.
I don't know if people know this, but I grew up very poor. So I was surrounded by mice. I was surrounded by bugs, bats. Ooh, bats. That's a fun one to deal with.
Um,
Like,
Bats, freaking scary. I
oh
know
yeah.
they're for the most part benign unless like they bite you or whatever, and you might have
Yeah.
rabies, but most times what?
And they hide. What people don't tell you about bats is they fly around, but they love. I used to always have to check my coats because they would hide in the folds of my coat, and so I would put on a coat not knowing there's a bat on my back, and then you would hear it screech. It would make like a noise, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, there's a bat on my back!"
So
And then
was it on the outside or on the inside?
oh, on the outside. They were sometimes on the inside though. They would crawl around like on the coat. If there was any, so besides mice, the number one like pest we used to always have to deal with was bats because where I grew up, the house was very old and like the ceilings were always cracked. So bats would just like fly in because it was warm. And
Yep, I have quite a few people who I know who live in older houses and they just have bats every summer. It's just
yeah.
they're all in there.
And the house is really weird. It has a false ceiling. So like it actually goes way taller than it actually does. So bats live in the ceiling and they would like crawl out through the or like they would like find a way out of the fake ceiling and they would like fly in. It was crazy. My childhood. I had to make an allegiance with them once to go against the mice, and we had to vote out the biggest rat. I ended up
And
finding
that's how you got into social strategy games.
I ended up finding the hidden immunity guano idol. It's my childhood was crazy. Okay, anyway, enough of this bit. Back to the plot of this episode. So, one thing that I think is really interesting as a plot development is we learn that Niles takes a lot of honor in being a butler. He comes from a long line of butlers, which I thought was very interesting. And I don't know his age, but he seems like he's been doing this for a really long time, but not long enough to already be a part of this association of butlers. So I wasn't like sure that plot point, but I liked the fact that we were getting to know Niles a little bit excuse me, sorry, a little bit more, because he's been kind of like just this like 2D character for the most part so far.
Yeah, and so in prepping for this episode, I kind of pushed that this out of all of them is more the Niles centric episode. I really feel like
Yeah.
he has way more to do with the plot, obviously, than anything else. But we do get to learn these little tidbits about him, and we don't get to. The best part is you know, his name is just Niles, just like Cher. Like, I mean, like that's the family name. Nothing
I
else there. We
yeah.
don't know his age. The fun fact is here, Danny Davis, who plays Niles, they loved him for the part. They absolutely loved him for the part, but they were like, but he's too old. And so they wanted someone who was younger, somebody who was at least like maybe in their 30s or exactly the same age as Maxwell. And so they were like, you know what? Maybe through his acting and such, he can look like he's around the same age as Maxwell. So that's why they ultimately gave it to him. But other fun fact about him, because just this is like the best time to say it, he's not British. He's
I
from
had
Arkansas.
I had a feeling. So in this episode specifically, I wrote it down. Because I don't know the actor. I was like, I feel like he's faking a British accent, because there were specific parts in this where I was like, you are like overdoing it on the British accent. And I had a feeling, I was like, I was going to ask you about this in this episode. I was like, is something is off about
Yeah.
Niles? And I don't know what it is, but that fully
That's actually
confirms.
so funny because most people watching the show, Charles Shaughnessy, who plays Maxwell Sheffield, would get letters from fans all the time, and the network would get letters that were like, that guy needs to learn how to do a British accent just like Niles. But like Charles Shaughnessy is British and like grew up in Britain, went to Eton and did like all these things and like became a lawyer and an actor and like
That's
moves
so
over here.
funny.
Danny Davis is fully from like rural Arkansas. Like, he's just a really good theater actor. So that was always something that was kind of funny with this episode.
That's
But
actually hilarious.
yeah.
So in this episode, the plot that is kind of throughout the entirety of it is there is this prestigious association of butlers that Niles wants to impress because he wants entry within this group, because it's a very high honor to be a part of this. So Niles is basically like telling Fran, like, I need to get the house ready. I need to get everything prepared because I have to be on my best behavior. So after this, all the kids come home, Maxwell comes home, and we learn that Brighton has won class president, or he won the election to be class president. And so Maggie's got some fun little remarks where she's like, who would have voted for you?
I
And that's
can't
what I was
believe you
thinking.
won.
Yeah, I can't believe, honestly, I'm shocked. But I'm going to say it again. Horny for Maxwell. I love the character development because he literally went from episode 1 really not giving a shit about his kids to in this episode revealing that he made the entire election plan for Brighton, and that he like this is something Brighton really wanted, and so he like put a lot of effort into it to make it like the best campaign that he could.
And
And
it was
later,
also something
oh
that
yeah,
Maxwell also could identify with his
yeah,
son too. Like he mentions multiple times ad nauseum throughout the episode that, well, I mention that I was my class president at Eton. And for those that don't know, Eton College is well, in the United States we would call it a private high school. It's in a very elite, uh, very typically traditionally upper class school. So being the class president at Eton would be a big deal. So the fact
got
that
it.
he like sees that his son wants to do this and he's like very involved in the campaign is, like you said, huge character development.
And it's hot because like again, it's the dad thing. It's like this parent instinct of seeing this guy become a better father, I think is just
Totally.
him hot. Like, I don't know, just something about it. I was like, I literally wrote down the dad did everything, and I'm like horny. Like,
I also have to say my other fun thing, and I would highly encourage people watch The Nanny like you and I are with subtitles because
yes,
it's really helping us to get a few different references. we get Brighton as a full 10-year-old actor slash character doing impressions of George H.W. Bush, of Ronald Reagan. Earlier in the season, Bill Clinton with the "I didn't inhale." Like, I mean, Brighton is it's actually very topical, and he's kind of the oh shucks, mommy, thank you so much. Like he does like that kind of stuff, and it's if you don't know the references or who people are doing, like Fran did it in the last episode where she mentioned Donna Reed and then starts singing the Donna Reed theme song for her show. Like, if you don't know that kind of stuff, like you can go, oh, okay, that's what it is, and then look it up later, kind of thing. So I highly encourage that because there's some fun little bits that Brighton got to do as a class president and play off presidential stuff.
Yeah, and so just as soon as Maxwell and the kids arrive, they leave again.
They're off to celebrate Brighton's win.
That's right.
So they're going off for the afternoon. There's just so much background information for this, so I'm so sorry that I keep interrupting you.
I want to hear it.
As they leave, Maxwell is wearing yellow wellies, like these
oh my God, yeah,
boots, and his pants are tucked in, and that it becomes a whole bit like, why are you expecting a flight? You're normally so like dapper. What's up with the boots? The reason why they fit that in there was because when Charles Shaughnessy came in to read for that part, it was downpour torrential raining, and he wore those boots in, and everyone's like, this is your finalist for Maxwell Sheffield. He doesn't look, he's wearing yellow wellies. Like, this is not a thing that we would expect from this character. And it was just such a funny moment that they were like, we have to put this in the show to like, as like a nod to Charles's audition. So it's something that they always talk about in like background, like behind the scenes stuff, like that's like just like a tip of the hat to
that's really cool.
His audition process was like.
Yeah, because when you mention it, it like was a weird bit. Like
thinking back at it, it's no bearing in the episode other than if you know the nanny, you're like, well, that was because of the audition. Like that's literally it.
That's actually really silly. So they end up leaving, and Sylvia comes over, and actually before this, we're introduced to the concept, because they aren't on camera yet, of Jack and Marcia.
Yep.
And Jack and Marcia are relatives to Fran that always try to one-up Fran and her family. So Marcia's this woman who married this really rich guy who also kind of enjoys taking part in this like one-upsmanship. But Marcia seems to be like the driver. She's like the one that's always trying to like get a snide like jab in to really like bring Fran down. And so Sylvia shows up, and they're kikiing, having fun, and then she's like, oh, and also Jack and Marcia here. And
well, more importantly, she's told so Jack, she said, oh my God, they were so annoying at this breakfast that we were at. And, Jack is saying how amazing Marcia's new house is, and that they've got her daughter's a champion equestrian rider, like all these different things. And I finally couldn't take it. And so I told them that you eloped with a famous, or not a famous, a Broadway producer, and you live in this gorgeous townhouse mansion on Park Avenue, and and that you're ridiculously happy and rich now. And Fran goes, oh my gosh, how did they react? And she said, well, you'll find out because they're parking the car. And so basically trying to coerce her into going into this act. And Fran's really resistant about it at first until she opens the door and Marcia says, Fran, well, you finally got married. Oh, we were so worried that you'd never be able to find a man, and you'd just be living your old life as an old lady, a maid for the rest of your life. And she goes, welcome to my home, and like immediately falls right into the charade.
And speaking of the charade, Niles ends up getting roped in to have to be Maxwell, because Marcia wants to meet the husband. She's like, well, we'll just stay. We want to meet the husband. We want to like stick around. And so Niles enters the room, and she's like, oh, Maxwell, and like plays it up. And Niles like catches on pretty quick, and it like is down to do this little bit with Fran, because they've established this friendship between the two of them. So he's like, I got you, girl. Like, this is where I'm like Niles' best gay friend. Like, he's just like, he's like, oh yeah, honey, I got you. But we learn that Niles is not gay because he makes a comment about other women that he had previously been with, or he makes like some sort of comment. So
Yeah.
I was like, got it. So I'm just gonna have to pretend you're gay
Yeah.
for the
I
show.
love, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
This
didn't
is
know if he
this is
was or
where we
not.
learn that Niles is not gay, but we can continue the narrative on this
Yes.
podcast as if he
Yeah.
is.
He is an honorary gay.
100%. He throws
So
shade better than a lot of other people I know, so he's honorary that way.
absolutely. So there is, I put quotes, but I can't remember this. I put bikini comment. I can't remember the bikini comment.
Oh, it's because Marcia says, where are your kids? I want to meet your kids. I mean, of course, they're not the fruit of your womb because, you haven't had children yet. Unlike, she's basically trying to say that.
Yeah,
And I can't remember why the bikini comes up, but Fran does say, um, well, that's why I can still fit in a bikini, Marcia, or like
that's right.
something like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
nice
So
little shade back at Marcia.
yeah, I love that. I love that moment because it's just oh, she's so quick-witted and like so like on it. Like Fran
Yep,
killing it.
absolutely.
So
They do a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of jabs from Marcia and Jack. There are a lot of jabs back from Fran and even Niles to a certain extent, back at them. And like Niles is going
yeah.
over the top. Oh, I can't spare a moment away from the light of my life that is Fran. Like it's so over the top. And Fran's just sitting there like, like,
It's so good. And I think this episode, while great, is even greater because I've seen the other episodes that lead into it. Like
yeah,
if I just saw this by itself, I'd be like, this is really funny. But now that I know like the rapport that both Niles and Fran have for each other and like the other small moments they've had leading up to this, it makes this episode so much more funny,
yeah,
especially after My Fair Nanny, where I think
yeah.
like My Fair Nanny is such a great lead into this because you see them try to make over Fran, and now Fran is kind of making over them into roles that they're not meant to be in, which I think
Totally.
is
In
really
that
silly.
last episode with Here Comes the Brood, we also get um how deep uh both Fran and the children love each other and that they would do anything for each other. But also that Fran is can be really lethal
Spicy.
with her shade. She can be
Oh yeah.
razor sharp. And so that's why I've said this a few times on the podcast, like you get to episode 6, which is what we're discussing tonight, and you really start to see, okay, some of the growing pains we came through kind of start to make sense. And season 1 will continue to have growing pains, but they kind of settle into their roles. They get a little bit more, like next episode is they introduce a little bit more slapstick comedy in. Like there's just little things that they're going to continue to build off of, but they kind of find their rhythm from here on out.
Cool. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So then the Butlers Association shows up at the door and Niles is like, "Oh my god, this is like not good for me." And so they have to kind of put on this facade that the butler is out, it's his day off.
That he took the
And
kids to the
yeah.
museum because it's the Butler Day at the museum. You bring a butler, get a free drink or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
And so they tell Jack and Marcia that I don't know why I find this line so funny, but they tell Jack and Marcia that the butler is out, and that's why they can't get a butler to serve them drinks before the butlers arrive. And then they go, "Are you two butlers?" And they go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'm surprised you're not at the museum." I don't know why I find that funny because it's so stupid, but I just always laugh at it.
Yeah. Um, then Maxwell and the kids show back up, and Fran like immediately goes over and is like, "Hey, I need to like pull you aside because he is very confused on like who the hell's in his house and what the hell's happening." So they try to sit down and convince him to pretend to be Niles, and Maxwell's very much against this idea. He's like, "This is like belittling to me. This is like not something I am okay with." But he ends up agreeing to it. And this is why I also am like horny for Maxwell because he agrees to do it because of his kids. And his kids are like, come on, dad. Like, this would be fun. Like, we're going to like have a
An
blast.
edit here, he does it because Marcia insults Fran.
Oh, that I see. I didn't catch that.
He does it because
Oh, okay.
he's not, he said, you got, my kids are not going to be involved with this. I'm not going to be involved with this. I don't care what you say, but we're not having any part of it. And they all leave. They go into the living room, and somebody said, I'm parched. Could you have something to drink? And they go, Niles. And of course, Niles is Maxwell, and Maxwell's supposed to be Niles, but he's not having anything to do with it. And he goes, there are drinks in the kitchen, help yourself. And the butlers go, how rude, how, like, and that kind of thing. And Fran and Fran goes, well, it's really, it's about loyalty here, and he, all that kind of stuff. They're trying to cover for him, but they're also trying to prod him. And Marcia then stands up and says, well, you really can't blame Niles. You have to blame the head of the household. And in this case, it's Fran, and she's really in over her head. And at that comment, he said, will that be shaken or
Got
stirred?
it.
Or no, crushed ice or cubed is what he said.
That's right. I must have been writing in my notes, like at that point. I
No worries. So
completely missed
basically what
that.
ends up
That's
happening
cool.
is Marcia's cousin basically said, well, Fran can't handle this. She's in over her head. And Maxwell's like, okay, you don't make fun of like my nanny that way. Like, who's in this situation is not his wife, is Niles' wife, but Niles is him. So it's all fun.
But based off my theory, soon to be wife. So they all play into this, and the kids are having a blast pretending that Niles is their dad. And Niles
that
is like,
their dad is now Niles.
yeah. And so they're like asking Maxwell these obnoxious things like, oh my God, can I have this? Can I have that? And like,
And a round of Oreos for my
yeah.
friends.
Yeah, Brighton's so stupid. And
That's
so
Master Brighton. And it's just like correcting his father. Like, it's so funny.
it is. And Maxwell's just like, oh, whatever. And on top of that, what makes this even funnier is the Butler Association are like staring down Maxwell to do a good job. So not only does he have to pretend to be a butler, he has to pretend to be a good butler, which
Yeah.
I wrote down, I was like, he's a good ass butler because he came back with those drinks real fast.
Yep.
Like, it was like
He
that.
he came back quickly and then immediately tripped. And
See, okay. So, did he trip or did Marcia trip him? Because I saw because he starts tripping right as Marcia is standing there, and I thought originally she tripped him, but then they don't like comment about it. So I was like, oh, maybe he like fell on his own accord. Because
I wouldn't be surprised if Marcia tripped him. I've thought about that before in the past. I think just either way, like he trips.
yeah,
And the bigger line joke there is, first of all, Fran going like that laughter to be like kind of cover up for it.
yeah.
But then Niles as Maxwell goes, oh, that's our butler, always doing physical comedy. Stop it, you're killing me, Niles.
I love it. So yeah, yeah, the kids are abusing Niles, and then the real Niles is eating all of this up. But then one of Brighton's schoolmates shows up at the house and is inviting him to come to his inaugural like party
Yep.
because his friend is the one that actually won class president and not Brighton. So Brighton was lying about it this entire time. And so Maxwell kind of drops the facade and is like taking this moment to like comfort Brighton and be like, why did you have to lie about this? Like, they're basically being a father to Brighton in this
Mm-hmm.
moment. And so the butlers are like, what is going on here? I'm very confused. Like, why is your butler like acting this way?
Yeah.
And this is when I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the charade is up.
Yeah,
So
Fran basically
yeah,
says, is trying to also do a teaching moment with Brian, which is like,
yeah,
it's, you never have to pretend to be somebody else. Like, who you are is enough. And then she's like, you know what? She's like, what parent would want you to be someone that you're not? And she's like, my mother. So then she comes out, she goes, okay, the charade is up. I am not married to Mr. Sheffield. And of course, at this point, they still have to keep up the Niles thing because the butler or whatever. She's like, and I'm not married to him. She like changes which direction she's pointing at. So she points at Niles. And she's like, but I am the nanny here. And then Jack and Marcia kind of go in. Sylvia then says, you know, I wouldn't trade my Fran for all the Marcias in the world. And then they kind of get off and leave.
Well, there is a hilarious moment where Maggie steps in, and this is
Mm-hmm.
proving my theory even more that Maggie is starting to pick up on some of these Fran moments and feels the need to get sassy, which this is so out of character for Maggie. And for Maggie to be like, shut up, you big green cow.
Yeah,
And I was like,
it's turquoise.
yeah, I was like, Maggie. I was like, this is so out of character for Maggie, but I loved it. But in my
Okay.
head, I was like, theory. Like, we're already starting to see Maggie start to pick up on more of like Fran's isms. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're going to get an episode at some point where she takes it too far and she tries to be Fran too much. And it's like, ooh, girl, we got to reel you back in. You still have to be Maggie. You can't just
Gotcha.
be Fran. So that they all leave, and it's then further revealed that Niles is Niles, and who they thought was the butler was Maxwell, and the
And that's
butler's
because Cece comes into the
oh
house.
yes, oh
Cece comes into the house and says, Maxwell, you'll never believe it. Um, but we received a call that we're going to have the St. James Theater. So those that don't know, the St. James Theater is one of the most famous, larger theaters of Broadway. And there's been like, it's an institution essentially. She's like, for our show, and Maxwell breaks his character and goes, "Oh my gosh, Cece, that's so exciting!" And then Niall steps and goes, "Yes, I'm very excited for our business." Like, and Cece's like, what's going on here?" And she kind of breaks it
that's
here for
right.
them. And then the butlers say, "Oh, so you're the butler and you were pretending like, well, it seems like we've been duped." And they start to leave, and there's that whole soliloquy basically that Fran goes, "Well, in what world have you ever seen a master of the house basically like do so much for his staff?" And that shows what kind of loyalty and what a wonderful job this dynamic is. And they just kind of go, "You know what, we do need the dues. Okay, you're in, you're fine." And then they
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah, I also want to point out, even though I was ragging on Cece last episode, my outfit of the episode goes to Cece for this episode because I
Ooh.
really like this like outfit she walks in with, because like
Yeah,
Fran, I mean, she
it's
doesn't
just
have
a
like
cardigan
it's just
and
a
like black
cardigan.
leggings essentially.
And I was considering, I was like, am I really gonna have to give this to Marcia? Because I really don't want to.
No.
And then Cece walked in, I was like, oh, we're giving it to Cece.
Yeah, no,
Like,
Cece looks good.
actually, you know what I should have given it to? I should have given it to Maxwell for the wellies.
I was
But
just gonna say the wellies. There we go.
but yeah, Cece outfitted the episode. And then that's kind of where this episode ends. And to be honest, I think it is an amazing episode. There is so much character development for specific characters like Maggie. We see a specific character development for Niles, a lot more character development for Maxwell and his relationship with both Niles and his children.
Yep.
And we get to see more of like the relationship between Sylvia and Fran, because
Yeah.
there's
I was
like this
just going to ask
dynamic.
you, this this episode shows how pushy, like we saw in the second episode or second or third episode. Oh no, the Nook Schlepp episode, episode 4, that Fran is seen to be pushy, but we really see that it's because of how pushy her mom is that
Yeah.
she's kind of inherited that pushiness.
Yeah.
And you get a good glimpse of the insights into like what Sylvia wants Fran to do for her and what Fran is willing and not willing to do for her mother.
Totally. And like I said at the beginning, this is hands down the best episode of the season so far. It's going to take a lot to try to uproot this one, because
Yeah.
this is an episode that I would have no problems watching 2 times in a row, and I'd probably still laugh at some of the jokes that are in
Oh,
it.
totally. Well, I have to. So next week's episode is Imaginary Friend, and it is a Mag or not a Maggie, a Gracie central centered episode. But that one's like I said, where they kind of bring in some of the more slapstick comedy stuff. The rest of this season is very solid. But I will say that to me, this past episode is a very big highlight. It's one of my top 3 favorite episodes of the season. The pilot is third, this is second, and I won't say what the other episode is, but there's another episode that is number 1 that's still to come.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yes!
Okay.
So going from a very strong episode of The Nanny with character development for multiple people, we really get to see a couple of characters in Lost get developed, and more specifically, we get more of Sun and Jen's background, specifically more Sun, and we say it from her perspective more than anything else.
Yeah. Can I just, before you get into your synopsis,
Please.
I remember when I first.
Oh, and also we need your LVP and MVP. I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. So my MVP for the episode is absolutely Niles. Niles fills it this episode. There's so many people I could give it to. My LVP is hands down Marsha.
Yeah, she's a C word.
Yeah. Like, not even close. Like,
yeah,
she can have LVP for the rest of the season, to be honest. She was that bad. Okay, sorry. So with Lost, I remember watching this for the first time, and this was an episode that, in my opinion, is just not well written, to the point where I remember watching this for the first time and almost stopped watching Lost because of it. Because I didn't know where the show was going after this episode, and I was just kind of like not feeling it. I will say it gets way better after this. It reels it back in. But
I felt like there was a lot of whiplash in this episode, where it's like all of a sudden there are elements here that like maybe they had hinted at before, but now they're just showing it in your face, and you're like, there was no gradual buildup. And I would think for the most part, it's both the relationship between Jack and Kate, and then that they do that a lot with, and then also Jen's attack on Michael. Those are the 2 things that just seemingly come literally like out of nowhere. And it's not like they don't present it in a way that's like there's a mystery and like throughout the episode you figure out what happened to get to that point. Like whatever. We'll get into it.
I also want to point out that this episode specifically was written by this is the first episode from one of the writers that we have not seen yet, and I think you can kind of feel that, like,
it did feel like it was written by a different writer at this point. And it's like someone who was in the room but hadn't like put pen to paper yet.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. All right, sorry. So go
no, that's fine. So I'm just gonna kind of go throughout the episode of what we see. And I didn't write as many notes as I normally do. It's just kind of like a little back and front. Normally it's like 2 pages, so I apologize. But basically we start off because Sun is watching the people be helpful for the group while Jin insists that they still stay to themselves. And then I wrote, and I don't remember, we just as background, Dylan and I watched this like 4 days ago before recording this podcast. So if I don't remember some things, you're going to have to jump in. But I then wrote, Jin, what the fuck, you fucking POS misogynist. So I don't know.
So, yeah. Let me, honestly, I feel like the way to do this is to let's talk about the flashback stuff, and then let's talk about what happened on the island. Because I think the way that you have to talk about this episode is similar to Tabula. Wait, no, the one I forgot. One of the episodes, the Kate one, where it was like not a lot happened in the episode.
Yeah,
but
because I mean, here's the plot. The plot for this episode really is they Jack takes Kate and Locke and Charlie, shows them where the fresh water is. They just Jack says it doesn't make any sense for us to be dragging this back and forth all day to 40, 4 other people or whatever the number is. We need to bring people here, and it seems like it's a good fresh. There's fresh water, shelter. This would be better. But then there's a whole camp of people who say, well, we want to be on the beach because what if we see a boat or a plane or something that we can be rescued? So it basically turns into two camps. There are some people, even after this whole united, we stand, divided, we die, essentially kind of thing. The group still splits off, and half the group goes to be in the caves, to be in better shelter and have fresh water. And the other group decides to kind of keep watch and kind of go from there. And this splits up Kate and Jack because of how they're feeling. And that's the main like plot for the entirety of the thing. There are little things that also happen, which we'll discuss, like Jin's attack on Michael, Charlie and Locke. Like there's definitely things there, but that is essentially the plot for everybody.
And there is a few like mysteries that do kind of come up during
correct.
This.
Yeah.
But in terms of the flashbacks, I'll give a TLDR and then we can kind of talk about it overall.
Perfect.
So what we kind of experience from Sun is Sun comes from a family who is very rich and very powerful.
And apparently very well respected as well.
Yes, very well respected. And so she kind of has this relationship with this lower class man named Jin. And so Jin doesn't work for her family. It's literally, it must have been like someone that she's just known for a while, because they play coy at this restaurant where they're all like pretending they don't know each other. And then like they meet outside of the restaurant and they're basically like, your father's distracted, like we can spend some time together. And also Jin's looking real hot in my opinion. Like,
I mean, Jin in a uniform and being romantic and not being a controlling piece of shit is cute. I was here for it. I was smiling when they were all excited. Yeah, and then like the next memory is, you know, Jin. Well, in that same memory where Sun basically says we should run off to America together because there's no way that we can be together. We get another memory where Jin has asked Sun's father for permission. Permission is granted, but it's conditional that Jin is now going to work for her father, which is actually, I think, supposed to be like this huge piece of respect. Like this is supposedly a very good thing. Like, oh my goodness, like what a huge leg up you just got in society, essentially, a huge honor. And on top of that, you get to marry Sun. And so literally, like, I couldn't help but kind of like smile a little bit when they were like, we're going to get married. Essentially, like they're all excited. And I'm like, oh, and then it cuts back to them on the island. And I'm like, oh, poor Sun.
Well, because it's interesting. I don't want to like say too much, but in this like flashback with Sun and Jin, there's a lot of time that passes, and I will say there's more story to tell.
And I think this makes sense because now that I know that Once Upon a Time, which is a show that I did watch quite a bit of, I watched quite a few seasons of it. We do see more and more story that kind of fills in some of these gaps and such. So it does make sense that there's quite a bit of time here. And I think that even though we are going to be talking a little bit more about the memories first, I kind of do want to talk about what it makes me feel like in the present day, quote unquote.
Totally.
So I had some theories that some of them I don't believe as much anymore, just how the episode unravels. So we do see Jin seemingly out of the blue just go and beat the crap out of Michael, and he's trying to drown him in the waves that are coming through, in the shallow waves. And Saeed and Sawyer step in and separate them. I think they're the two that separate them out.
Yeah.
This is while the other four are going to get water for everybody. And so I wrote down, I think Jin thinks that Sun and Michael have been looking at each other because we've now seen a few times where Michael ran into Sun when she was like making herself more presentable and all these different kinds of things. And I think there must have been, like, I thought maybe there was a look or something. And I think that Jin I thought he was in like a jealous rage about Sun. And we're also going back and forth between these memories where he was obviously in love with her and she was in love with him. And I also wrote, Jin probably feels like he's not enough for Sun, who comes from a higher class, and hence maybe the control that he feels like he needs to have over her and
Yeah.
like have in this situation and kind of show his strength and show that he can provide and that he can do these things, which would contextualize why he's been a piece of fucking shit this entire time. Not
Yep.
that it's right, but it tells you like maybe where he's coming from. Um, so that's just kind of like where I was for these first couple of memories as it relates to like how it's flashing forward to the present. And then I find out that's probably not even really it
It's
because
yeah.
what the fuck? Um, he actually attacks Michael because of the watch he's wearing, which like we'll
It
get
was
to that later, but like it had nothing to do with everything that they're setting up memory wise. So I was like, okay, I guess this is
yeah.
for another purpose.
And that's kind of where I think the writing of this specific episode is kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah,
It a what we've seen of Jin so far, the way that he attacks and tries to kill Michael is so out of character for me
yeah.
based off of just a watch. Like
And the
it's
fact that he hasn't
weird.
attempted to get the watch back that
Yeah.
we've seen. So, like, wouldn't you think I mean, he's had no issue trying to communicate before with like, take some food or
Yeah.
I need some water. I need to get water for my wife or whatever, those kind of things. So wouldn't you think he would go to Michael and basically be like, your watch is my watch?
Yeah.
And then wouldn't
Uh,
you think Michael would probably be like, oh, okay, here you go. Like,
well, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
I think the reason they do this, and this is kind of what annoys me a little bit with this specific episode, is they're trying to showcase that Jin is a violent person.
right.
That he, because we see in the flashbacks, the work that he does for Sun's father involves blood or beating people up or some kind of violence, which is different than what he had been doing before, and this violence clearly changes him. He is a much different
Yeah. And
person
we also
over
see that
time.
obviously there's a lot of time, as you mentioned, that goes in between. Like we see him give Sun a puppy because he's not home and he feels like she needs a companion. We then see the dog like fully grown
Yeah.
and he's like now washing blood off of his hands and his clothes when he gets home. And this is where you kind of learn that, like, oh, there might be even more of a reason why Sun's father is respected more than just he holds societal power. It might be that he has kind of like a mafia like aspect to his industry, which clearly he does. Um,
Yeah.
and that Jin likely feels like he can't leave that situation. And I also feel like there's probably a part of him, I do think that he has control issues. And I do
For
think that like
sure.
even if he's like, I have to do whatever her father wants, but I'm also think that there's probably a part of him that enjoys having that control and that power.
Yeah.
So
Like
he doesn't
everything that
really want to leave it.
yeah, like everything that we talk about is not to excuse like his clear like abuse towards Sun.
Correct.
Like he is absolutely emotionally manipulating Sun,
Absolutely.
especially on the island. And it it's tough because I've what I found very interesting from these flashbacks is the fact that Sun doesn't seem what? Wait, you're starting to laugh.
I flipped over my page and I found my notes for that section, but I want to you continue and then
Okay,
I'll
okay,
put it
okay.
in.
So, what surprised me was that Sun doesn't learn what her husband's work is until that dog is fully grown. So,
And that
like,
also probably tells you that she also doesn't know what her father really does.
yeah,
And I don't know much about Korean culture in terms of like what does I know that obviously within quite a few different Asian countries, their cultures are very heavily founded on respect and respecting your elders, respecting those of different classes, and there is definitely a hierarchy of power when it comes to respect and power and control in that way. But I don't know too much about it, so there is a part of me that wonders, like, how much do women really know, like what their men like in their families and that they engage with know and like what they do. So yeah, the fact that she doesn't know that. So during during the scene where he gave her the puppy,
Yeah.
I wrote, "Hey, here's a gift, unsolicited. Here's a gift, unsolicited responsibility. Fuck off, Jen." Like, I hate people
Yeah.
who gift a pet without talking about it first to somebody, because what you're basically saying is, take care of this pet. And after I wrote that note, he literally said, "But you're going to have to train him, and you're going to have to," like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? What, does she have a life? I don't know. It sounds like I know she's going shopping a lot, because every time we see her come home, she has a Chanel bag or something. But
Yeah.
like, does
Okay.
she not have anything else to do in her life?
But at Maxwell, because like Maxwell does that to Cece and the nanny as well.
True, totally true. But an engagement. That's keep that in mind as we move forward. By the way.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
And
So,
then
oh
I
yeah.
also wrote, "Jen, fuck off, you manipulative son of a bitch." Like, I am
Yeah,
so violent. Like, a lot of this stuff is like you said, like he's being very emotionally manipulative of Jen.
absolutely.
And
Yes.
then when he comes home and he's washing the blood off, son is really drilling into him, like, "Did my father make you do this? What's going on?" Blah blah blah. And he won't answer her, and so she slaps him. And
Yeah.
I just wrote, "Yes, you slap him." Very excited that that
I
happened.
I it's so one thing that really bothers me about this flashback is it paints Sun as this weak person because she doesn't seem to give a shit what her husband's doing for years, supposedly.
Years.
She's never once questioned what her husband is doing. She just seems content with this like shitty life that she has,
Right.
which I feel like what we have seen on the beach and on the island thus far is not the character that we're seeing in this flashback, because she seems resilient enough to like unbutton her button and like
You also have to see too that, like, in the first flashback, it's very her, like, going along with going against the rules, being resistant to what is expected of her, in the fact that she even loves Jen and is trying to run away with him and do these different kinds of things. So literally, I feel like her father, this is a theory I have, and I
okay,
don't know if this will get cleared up or not. I feel like her father gives Jin permission as a means to control his daughter. So, like, here
yeah,
you go. Yeah, you can marry my daughter, but you're going to actually be married to me because you're going to do my dirty work. And that's going to keep Jen or our son here, because I know she wants to leave. And this is going to keep her here. And I'm going to be able to control her and you for the rest of my life. And I think that that's a means of control, because we
makes
see that
sense.
Jen gets more manipulative and controlling, and Son loses this power and this resistance and such, to a point. Because the other big thing that comes out in one of the last flashbacks is that Jin has been learning English, and she's been basically
I mean, Sun.
preparing.
Sun has been.
Sorry, son.
Yeah.
Son has been learning English, and she's been preparing to leave Jin.
Yep.
And she has it all set up that, which this also is not put in the episode. I needed Dylan to explain this to me. It is a one line. One line. All you have to say is, "Once you're in Australia for your connecting flight," or whatever the fucking case is, because all they say is, when you're at the airport at
Yeah.
11:15, look outside, there's a car. You just leave the airport, don't bring anything with you. And, we're going to pretend like you've been kidnapped for a few months. And then, because you'll be, once people can't find you, then you can, like, live the life that you want to live, and, like, you can escape, because Sun knows how violent Jin is, and also now knows how violent her father is. And she realizes that it's for her best safety and freedom that she needs to leave both of them.
Yep.
So we do get that flashback there. And that's important to know too, that she still has inside of her this need to be free, this need to be away from violent people.
Yep. And this is our first flashback within a flashback. So this flashback goes back to last episode's flashback with Jack, like yelling at the front counter person about this coffin, and now we see it from Jin and Sun's point of view.
Right.
I want to get your thoughts on why you think Sun didn't leave. What kept her around despite everything that we've seen? She should have wanted to leave. So what do you think kept her back?
So what we're seeing in that scene in the flashback is that she's looking at the clock, she's looking over at Jen, she's looking at the car outside, and she's crying. And I think that I think this is what a lot of abuse victims come across, which is this
Totally.
idea of, even if I do quote unquote escape, I'll never fully escape. I'm going to be spending the rest of my life wondering, are they around the corner? Are they going to come get me? And I think she realizes it more in that moment, the do or die moment. I'm never actually going to be free. And then in that exact same moment, he holds up her like special like little flower thing. And I don't think that she necessarily falls for it in terms of like, oh, he does love me. But I think that she realizes like the guy I fell in love with is still in there and maybe I can change him, which is I also think something that we see with like a lot of people who are in cycles of abuse, this idea of like, well, if I stick around a little bit longer, the person I love is still in there, maybe I can change them. And I honestly think that that's like what it is more than anything else. Um,
Totally.
so she goes and joins him. She's crying, and he asks if she's upset, and she said no. It's so beautiful talking about the flower, and he just kisses her like really sweetly while they wait in line, and that's that. She gets on the flight, and now they're in this like purgatory island thingy. So he
So
never did escape.
so I want to get your thoughts now. I don't think we already kind of went over like the plot of this episode, but there are some major like story beats I think we
And
need to talk about.
I want to finish just one more
Yeah,
thing
go
with
for it.
Sun and Jin, and then we can focus on the other characters. We it does get revealed. We get it revealed through the flashback as well that Sun has been learning English, but she reveals it to Michael that she knows how to speak English, and she asks Michael for a favor. And after Michael has been beat up, and she's the one that reveals it's because of the watch you're wearing. My father gave it to Jin for safekeeping. And that to me, that put a little theory in my head that maybe the point of their trip that they're making is that Jin is supposed to deliver this watch. So maybe there's special meaning within the watch. So, um, is there something hidden inside? Is there something like that Jin is supposed to be doing? Because like, why would her father give him a watch if they're leaving the country for
Yeah.
safekeeping? So I really think that that's something pertinent to what we're probably going to learn in the future. But I think that I think the favor was to set Jin free, but to also like potentially like help her and like keep her secret that she knows how to speak English, because while he doesn't know that she knows how to speak English, and she needs to keep it that way for her safety. But she can also like now have somebody that she can talk to. And I think that that's the real reason why she wants to like, you need to help me. I'm going to like give you information, and I'm going to need you to like help me by pretending I don't know how to speak English and all that kind of stuff. So I think that
Yeah.
that's like part of what it is.
Yeah, like basically go scare the shit out of my husband and give him back the watch and
Give him
keep
back
his
the
secret.
watch, but then help me from here on out. Like,
Yeah.
and kind of go from there. But there's really not much else there. That people kind of just kept Jin in the handcuff to make sure that he couldn't hit anybody else, but he's like left out in the sun with no
Yeah.
water or anything like that because they're waiting for the water to come back. So Michael, who's the one that like he almost kills, is the one to set him free. And I think that that also puts Jin in his place a little bit, which
Yeah.
I think that Sun also knows would be the case. So, but I think
I
that's important.
and this is like I feel like is a little bit of symbolism here because um Jin, so whenever you think of Jin's character, half of a handcuff is always kind of like part of his character, at least in the like
Oh, because they can't get the rest off then?
yeah.
Gotcha.
So what we learn in this flashback in these flashbacks is that when he makes this deal with Sun's father, he's basically handcuffed now to that life.
Yep.
And so now that he's on the island, he is freed of whatever kind of oaths or bounds that he had back in Korea.
That
And
makes sense.
so I didn't pick up on that nuance until this episode. And I was like, oh my God, that was such a smart way to like symbolize him breaking free of this. But your past is always stuck to you. So like you're no matter what you do, you will always carry
You're
the
not going to be
weight
able
of,
to get rid of it, kind of
yeah,
thing.
you will never get rid of it, but you are free while on this island.
I would also like to make
yeah.
one more note about them, which is not so much about them and more about Hurley. Hurley, love you, but you need to stop calling them Chinese. Like,
Yeah. Agreed.
this,
Yeah.
there's, you can tell that there's a lot of, well, from Hurley's character, just a lot of either implicit bias, just incredible racism, whatever
Yep.
it is that is manifested either from ignorance or whatever. But he often mislabels their ethnicity, and it's really cringy in 2021.
Yeah. And also the fact that Sawyer keeps calling Jin Mr. Miyagi, which is like
Yes, which
referring to him
again,
as Japanese.
that's exactly like
Yeah.
there's a very big difference between these nations and like their cultures and history.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
It's
and I mean, we also saw this too with the way that Sawyer has talked about Saeed's character, or like Saeed
yep.
and all that kind of stuff. So I do think that that's an important thing, and I do think that that's something that I think Lost put in the show, like the writers put in the show, as it means to make people like look racism in the face. Because if you look up, I mean, this came out in what, 2004?
Yeah.
This is fresh really after 9/11. This is
Yep.
when racism, like overt racism specifically against people of Middle Eastern descent, and Asian descent too, honestly, descent, were this was on the rise. And so I think that these are actual choices that the writers made. But I would say in 2021, I think we have grown where we don't need to slap people over the face by showing racism in that kind of way, without it being called on.
Yeah.
And I think that if it was written nowadays, if Hurley had said, called them Chinese, I feel like Kate's character would have stepped, or Claire, or somebody would have stepped in to be like, they're Korean. That's a big difference, and you need to change that. Like, I mean, that's like
Yeah.
the additional level that I feel like we've grown in the past 15 years.
Totally, especially with like the Stop Asian Hate movement that we've kind of been seeing in America this year, and it's like opened a lot of people's eyes. You okay? You
My
got
dad just scared me while I'm podcasting. So no big deal. There's a glass door right over here that I have shut, and all of a sudden I
yeah.
saw this figure move, and he has this wonderful robe that he got when we were in London, but I call it his Dumbledore robe because it is like a huge navy blue, like
Yeah.
flowing robe with a hood. And all of a sudden I looked over and there's just this figure going in the window and just made me jump. So fun times.
This is like the third creepy thing that's happened to you
I
on a
can't escape it. At
podcast.
least I know he's living. I hope he's living. If not, that was a really if
Ooh, that'd be
I find out he
creepy.
passed away, like,
Oh, that'd be so scary.
also so sad. Oh
Okay.
God.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
a one story beat that I really want us to talk about is we get this really fun interaction between Locke and Charlie
yes.
about withdrawals and drugs, and Locke realizing that like he recognizes that Charlie's going through withdrawal symptoms and is like, I just want to hear your thoughts. Also, shitty CGI bees. That's all I'm gonna say. But like
So there's a couple things here that I don't know that I've
okay.
asked
Yeah.
myself, right? So Locke engages in this conversation with Charlie, doesn't let Charlie be alone when they leave. Charlie goes outside, I think, to try to do, I think it's is it coke that he has, like,
Honestly, I'm not even sure. I think it might be heroin.
or something. I hope,
Yeah.
like, whatever I feel like it's coke, because I feel like he's trying to put it on his gums, which I'm not a big drug person, but I know that people will do that with coke. I don't know if you do that with heroin. I think it's too powerful. Heroin's too powerful to do that. But anyway,
Yeah.
because
You
all I
keep
think
going. I'll look it
I
up.
only think of that because of Pulp Fiction. Like, tried to shoot up, and she does heroin by accident, too much of it, or she snorts it.
It
and
is
it's too much.
heroin. It is heroin.
Oh, it's heroin that he's doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so Beth is real off, so clearly never listened to me about drugs. I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so he is sneaking off to try to do heroin, and Locke immediately shows up. He stands up on the bee's nest, and they try to block it, all this other stuff. This leads throughout the entirety of the episode. Locke is like never really letting Charlie out of his sight. And they have this conversation where Locke basically tells him that, like, oh, I know who you are. I know that you are the bassist and guitarist for this band, that you had a couple albums and, all these different kinds of things. And I don't think that Locke knew that beforehand. He doesn't strike me as someone who had just been listening to Charlie's music and has waited until day 6 or whatever to say something to Charlie, that he knows who he is. I really think because he alludes to how this island gives you what you need if you give up something, I think that he has been able to get like some kind of, like, he talks about being able to see like visions or whatever. I really think that what he's been able to do is figure out what do people need and what does the island need for them. And so he's kind of working as like a connector for the island versus the people. And so he knows that, like, okay, Charlie needs to give up his addiction, but he also needs his guitar. Like, that's what's going to be helpful for him. And I don't know how much of Locke like knew that the guitar was fine ahead of time, or if he had the vision that he was going to get the guitar ahead of time, but first he needed to get Charlie to stop. It just strikes me as weird that he just happens to know all this information about Charlie.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. So he does get Charlie to promise that he'll give the rest of his like stash to Locke. And the moment that he does that, Locke says, "Look up." And when he looks up, right up by on like a hill, there's his guitar, and it's in the case. And so we do see Charlie for the rest of the episode kind of playing around and picking around with the guitar. And I really, really like the symbolism of somebody who is a musician, because music is very much an addictive drug, but like a very like healthy kind of addiction. I've seen many people channel previous addictions into, what do you do with your hands, for example? Like, that's something, like, if you try to quit smoking, a lot of people have to hold something in their hands a lot of the time, or like they put a pencil in between their fingers, or they do something like that. Doing something like playing guitar and using the dexterity of your fingers and really focusing on all the different areas of like music and tuning and what your fingers are doing and all those different kinds of things is actually really beneficial. So I love that symbolism there. But so I liked that, but it's just like, oh, Locke, who are you? Like, this is it's so interesting to me.
So kind of on that same note, because Locke and Charlie are of the group, I believe, that ends up going to
Into the cave,
caves.
cave, yeah.
So at the caves, there are 2 corpses, 2
Adam and Eve.
skeletons that they call Adam and Eve, with a white stone and a black stone.
I did write white and black. And I feel like, once again, we're getting a white and black decision. Do you stay in the cave or do you stay out in there? And like, so it's all about these decisions that seemingly are white and black, that are, you do one thing or the other thing. There's no in between. There's no, let's set up a camp in the middle situation going on. There's this idea that they're going to still get fresh water to the people who are out on the beach, and that the people on the beach are always welcome in the caves. But like, they've kind of decided that we do need people in both places, essentially. So I do like how Lost seemingly presents a black and white decision and then provides the gray area that people are trying to come up with as well. And I just need to put this out there. I need to talk about Jack and Kate for a second with this.
I was going to bring it up. Okay. It's so cringy.
First of all, they start off fucking the shit out of each other in this episode. And it has elevated. Like, they kind of checked out each other. You could tell that there was some chemistry, that kind of thing. But it was like, this was just like, they woke up horny. Like, this was just absolutely, like, they woke up and was like, so, you want to fuck me? Like, this was real, like, left. This is one of the whiplashes I'm talking about.
And this is where I think like where the writing of this episode is so bad.
It's so like I was rolling my eyes so hard at like the dialogue and the were you checking out my ass and like the all like I mean come on. But then I also wrote writers. Okay. When the bees when Charlie's on the bees nest, Locke tries to cover the bee's nest with like with I can't remember what it was like a sweater or something like that. Oh, the suitcase. That's right. They're going to use a suitcase to try to cover it, to try to contain as many bees as they ran away. Didn't work. Charlie shuffled his weight. Bees go all over the place. And of course, Jack and Kate run off together, but they have to strip off their clothes in order for this to happen. And now they're like together in a very intimate like setting in the cave. With this is when they find the two corpses or like skeletons really at this point. I wrote writers. How do we get Kate and Jack to not have clothes anymore? Oh yeah, let's use bees. Like like it just was so ridiculous. And I did like the line where I can't remember who said it. Was it Charlie? Or somebody said something.
Oh, where, the cup. I loved it. It was so funny. He basically remarks she was talking about the bees. She was like something about the bees, and he's like, "Oh, I thought
I would have thought they were C's."
Yeah, it's so the way he
says it, boobs, which I was laughing at because I literally, while I was listening to that line, I wrote, "Ugh, imagine having to wear the same bra every day," and then I wrote B's versus C's. I just felt like the writing was so weak for the development of these two characters that they've seemingly taken a lot of patience and time to like draw out parts of their character while also making other things mysterious.
I think another reason why the writing is so bad in this specific episode is because, like you said, everything that's led up to this, they have like this weird character shift at the beginning, but by the end, there's another weird character shift where they go
and
from
that
like
also makes no sense. So this is the other thing. So for whatever reason, Kate never talks. This is what I hate the fucking most about both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them refuse. Clearly you love each other, not love, but like clearly you're into each other. Clearly you trust each other more than anybody else in this island. Fucking talk.
Yeah.
Just communicate. What? I don't get it. So throughout this entire episode, Jack is gung-ho about bringing people to the cave. And clearly Kate isn't. And we don't really see like why that is. And then they have this like heartbreaking, quote unquote. I say heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to them. I couldn't give one less of a shit about this conversation because I was like, what the fuck is happening in this episode? But basically they're sitting on the beach and Jack was like, what part of you doesn't like why? And she's like, you missed your opportunity to learn about that part of me. And I was like, bitch, you were stranded on an island. You can fucking tell him. Like, what is wrong with you? Also, like literally 10 minutes ago, weren't you just like, do you like my ass? Like, what the hell? Like, I just like this. It just is such a weird thing. And then she stays on the beach and he's in the cave. So I guess they're not into each other anymore.
Yeah, I don't know where. I honestly don't know how many episodes this writer. The writer of this was Javier Grillo Mark. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I apologize, Javier. But I'm curious. Okay, so he did a few more episodes going forward. He only wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, only 7 episodes of Lost.
Okay.
He worked on some of the ARG elements of the show. This is like
it makes no sense with what they've built up with such care over the other 5 episodes.
Yeah, like in my opinion, this is the probably weakest episode of season 1, and from my memory that I can recall, just because it is so odd and strange. There is a fun tip or like a fun little nod in this episode. So when Kate and Jack are talking about Jack's tattoos, there is a reason for that. And that's because the actor Matthew Fox Originally was on oh, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. It's driving me nuts. Party of Five, which was a television show back in the 90s. That tattoo he has is from Party of Five. It's a tattoo that he got as like a to immortalize the experience of that show. The I believe someone that's listening, please correct me if I'm wrong. He did not want to cover up the tattoo.
Right.
And so they had to like factor it into his character as if like that's why she's like, these are really weird tattoos for someone that's a surgeon to have. And it's kind of them poking fun at the fact of like, why do you have like a 5 that looks like a pyramid?
So this is
And
amazing. We have Mr. Sheffield wearing wellies for no reason as a means to bring
yeah,
like a joke about his audition, and then we have Matthew Fox with a Party of Five tattoo being joked about in here too. So I mean, this is the bridge apparently
it
between the
is.
nanny and Lost. What?
Yeah. So, but what I wonder is if they wanted to make this joke and then they took it like they took it too far and they made him too flirty. I don't
It's
know.
just
It's just a shitty
it's
episode.
so weird and it's such whiplash. It goes against everything I feel like has been built up, and that's why I wondered if there was a different writer, but clearly there is. There's only one other thing that I wanted to bring up of a discussion that's unrelated to everything else. How
Yeah.
the fuck is Michael better from the boar injuring him? Like he's just walking relatively fine now when he couldn't even walk a couple days ago.
Uh,
So once
I
again,
I will
time on
also
the island.
yeah.
The
I will
island
also
taketh
remark
away, the island giveth, all these different things.
how do 40 plus people survive a plane crash on an island and seemingly little to no injury? Like that's like another
Again,
thing.
how does Jack wake up just in the middle of the jungle in one
Yeah.
piece? So many things.
So you mentioned that one of your theories you felt like isn't gonna happen, or you said earlier like you had some theories that you think weren't right. What were
Oh,
those
that was
theories?
about Jin.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
okay.
was thinking like, oh, I think that he just like it was about Jin and Michael. I thought that that was the reason why he like my theory at that point was, oh, he
Got it.
thinks that Michael and Sun are doing, or like Michael is like mentally undressing Sun or something like that, and like he was kind of like defending his wife's honor, but like that literally had nothing to do with it. So I guess not.
Totally.
Um,
Um,
I
I
would overall rate this episode like 5 out of 10. There's still some substance there. Um, and then in terms of characters, like my MVP and LVP, this is very easy. MVP is Sun. I really like getting to see things from her perspective. Um, and I don't fault her for ending up to stay with Jin. Obviously, I wanted her to run out of the airport, but we knew it wasn't going to happen.
yeah,
Um, but I also I've made it a habit in my adult life to really make sure that I'm not like victim blaming, and especially those that come from abusive relationships or manipulative relationships and such. And so I don't blame her for staying with Jen. Um, and even if I did, I still think that she's the MVP of this episode. It's hard to like not make this episode her the
totally.
MVP. And then likewise, Jin is the LVP, you loser person. Once again,
Yeah.
like I literally like he and Shannon are like my least two favorite people on this cast. I just
Interesting.
can't.
No, I think it's valid, especially like from what we've seen so
And I
far.
have
Like,
to
there's
say,
no redeemable qualities.
2 episodes, no Shannon. Oh, it's been a great time. I really like
Yeah.
even Boone had a big thing last episode. She was nowhere to be found. I was so happy about it.
Well, she was in it because she has that conversation with Sawyer. With
Fast
yeah.
forward through, who cares? You know, it's just
No, but
whatever.
I agree. I agree. Do you want to know who the next episode's about?
Yes.
It is a Charlie centric episode.
Okay. I hoped it was going to be Charlie next
Yeah,
because Charlie just got the guitar. He just gave up the heroin, so it is going to be important, I think, to get a little bit more of his backstory. So
it
I'm
is
excited.
called The Moth.
The Moss.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I don't know why, but I just feel like there is going to be a connection between a Grace and Charlie centric episode next week. Like I feel like it's going to
Oh my
happen, especially
God.
since one is called Imaginary Friend. What's the moth? The
Okay. So
Imaginary Moth is going to be the title of next podcast.
I'm down for that. So the now that we're done with the episodes, let's get into some viewer comments. We did have
Yes.
a few comments. So Jackie says another great episode. This is from last episode. Another great episode. It really is so much fun recalling all the episodes with you both and having those, oh, I remember when that happened moments. So
I love that too. Yes, Jackie. Thank you so much for listening.
And then Angela, our lovely Australian, says, why can I feel Nigel, who is my husband's name, raise an eyebrow when Dylan mentions him in a cleaning related job, which is what I did last episode. We also have Carrie Ann, another viewer of ours, who said, Beth is on fire with her lost theories. It's so hard not jumping into the stream and saying things.
Hey, all I'm saying is, you know, I'm smart. I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see. And then newer viewer Caitlin Weaver commented on some of our older episodes and said in about episode 3 about Tabula Rasa and the I forgot the name of My Fair Nanny. I think it's episode 3. She says the how now brown cow line gets me every time. Yeah, it gets me every time. So good. Yeah, it is.
Well, I love that we had the how now brown cow. And then in this episode, we have Maggie calling Marcia a green cow. And then Fran goes, Maggie? It's not green, it's turquoise.
The way she said that's so good. So good. My gosh. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to the 6th episode of Hot Moments.
Hard to believe it's been 6 whole episodes of being a hot mess moment.
We'll see. I have the week off from streaming this week. So maybe if we can, I mean, we can record 2 episodes.
I'm here for it.
And pump out 2 episodes next week. Just as a little surprise.
And also, just so our viewers know, there will be a few weeks where we're going to combine a couple episodes of Lost or a couple episodes of The Nanny. Sometimes it might just be about Lost or just be about The Nanny. For the most part, this is going to be the format as we move forward. But there are, in the grand scheme of everything, at least 25 more episodes of The Nanny. So we will have to just kind of like...
Oh, wait, of the season?
Just no, like overall.
Only 25 episodes?
No, so there's like 120 episodes altogether of Lost, and there's 145 or so episodes of The Nanny.
I see what you're saying.
So at some point, we'll have to double up on some of these episodes of The Nanny to kind of catch up a little bit with Lost.
No, that makes complete sense.
And also, The Nanny is consistent with 20 to 24 episodes versus Lost was like season 4 switches to like 13 or something like that.
Yeah, so the last 3 seasons of Lost have shortened seasons, so they're literally like half episode seasons. So yeah, they go for like 14, 15 episodes. Cool. So if you guys want, make sure to check us out at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter. Please consider following. And if you haven't already, make sure to leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. It helps us out tremendously. Please leave a written review. You could be our first written review. I'm just saying, we haven't had a single written review yet. We've only had ratings. So
I would love for somebody to just comment about how right I am and how wrong Dylan is.
No, don't say that, because then people are going to see that and they'll be like, wow, that Dylan guy sounds disgusting.
And then they're going to want to listen because they're like, how disgusting is he?
No, don't encourage this. I don't want to. But yeah, make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and if you want to watch the video version, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/hotmessmoments. You can also follow me personally at 8-Bit Dylan. That is the number 8, BITDYLAN. And if you have any of your juicy Lost comments or theories, make sure to tag me in them and not Beth, especially if they're spoiler spoiler-esque because I love seeing comments about Lost. But again, they might not get mentioned in the episode if they are spoiler-esque.
That's true. And same thing goes with The Nanny. If you would like to leave, first of all, if you ever just want to follow me, hi, I'm Beth, also known as Augusta Wind 11. I won't spell it out because I don't want to spell it, but it's Augusta is in the city of Augusta. Wind, and then the number 11 on all social media as well as Twitch. And if you have any thoughts that you want to talk about The Nanny, feel free to send them my way. And especially if there are spoilers or anything like that, make sure not to tag Dylan on them, because this is I think the best part about our podcast is the fact that it's completely spoiler free. Like, we don't know anything about each other's show, so it's exciting.
Yeah, you can watch along with us, grab some popcorn, enjoy the ride. Again, if you have HBO Max, you can watch all of the episodes of The Nanny on HBO Max. And The Lost is kind of all over the place depending on your country. So it might be on Hulu, it might be on Amazon Prime, it might be on Disney Plus. It all depends on your country. But if you want to watch along on Lost, you can watch it on those streaming apps. But this has been the 6th episode of Hot Mess Moments. We will see you all next week with possibly 2 episodes, 1 or 2 episodes. You'll have to wait and see. Follow us on Hot Mess Moments and you'll find out. And until next week, bye.
Toodles.